What's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. So last week a buddy of mine dropped me off a Japanese import Dreamcast shooter and I thought it was great. So I've been neglecting the Dreamcast when it comes to shooters. I've been playing every other system. So in the spirit of the game that he dropped off to me today, we're going to talk about Zero Gunner 2 on the SEGA Dreamcast, a game that I think has a very interesting game mechanic. We'll get into that in a minute. But I actually made copies of all the Dreamcast shooters I've been wanting to play for quite some time. So I sent some out to some fellow YouTubers that I chat with. Look forward to getting those in a couple of days. And, you know, I might throw some copies off on Etsy, like maybe like a 4 or 5 pack for like 25 bucks just to help fund the channel. You know, I don't know. We'll see if people like them first. Anyways, guys, Zero Gunner 2 on the SEGA Dreamcast. Let's check it out. So what exactly is Zero Gunner 2? Well, for this one I had to turn to Wikipedia to learn a little bit more information. So Zero Gunner 2 is a 3D multi-directional shooter developed by SEGA. Yeah, that's right, multi-directional shooter. It's not a twin-stick shooter, but we'll get more into that here in a little bit. But it is the sequel to Zero Gunner, an arcade game. Now, this game was released for the SEGA Dreamcast in Japan back in 2001. Now, this part's pretty cool. A version of this game was developed and released in 2018 for the Nintendo Switch by, and please don't kill me if I mispronounce this, Zero Dive, I believe that's how it's pronounced, Zero Dive. So this version was given the title Zero Gunner 2 by Zero Dive as he had to rebuild the game from scratch. And he also wanted to pay respect to the original version, so I guess what they're saying is the source code from the original game went missing, which makes sense because that has happened to other SEGA games in the past, like Panzer Dragoon Saga. But anyway, he rebuilt the source code, I guess, based on what Wikipedia is saying, from the ground up for a release on the Nintendo Switch. So that's pretty cool. And this game has, I said the game mechanics are pretty cool, but this game has some very interesting mechanics that sets it apart from pretty much any other shooter that I've ever played. But again, we'll get more into that here in a minute. So since this is a Japanese game and I can't understand any of the story from the version that I don't have a translated version or anything like that. Anyway, according to Wikipedia, this is the story for Zero Gunner 2. In the near future, an Asian conglomerate known as iGEM develops a unique energy source capable of developing a number of innovative machines. An overabundant research with energy leads to the construction of a weather control machine called ONI, developed entirely for the purpose of taking over the world. Once ONI is activated, the countries of the world suffer as iGEM's secret militia move to destroy any opposition. It is here that a Zero Gunner squadron is called into action to stop iGEM and to destroy ONI. So I guess it's pretty cool that this game actually has a story, but I mean, come on, we don't play these games for the story. So let's get on to the menu system. So the options for the game, you have start game / difficulty. So this game's kind of different in the way you choose your difficulty. So right from the start game, you can press left or right, and you can control the difficulty of the game. It's pretty much on a 1 through 7 scale. So you have start game / difficulty, which again is pretty interesting. Options, ranking, and replay mode. I mean, ranking and replay mode are pretty much self-explanatory. We really don't need to talk about that at all. But in start game, like I said, it's different. Like I said, you have a 1 through 7 scale of difficulty. So all you do is, you know, hover the cursor or whatever over start game, just kind of move left and right until you get to your desired difficulty. I would suggest, if you're just starting this game, and because the battle mechanic is so unique, I suggest that you start at either a 1 or a 2. I mean, I did, unless you're like the messiah of shoot-em-ups, in which case, do 7 all day long. Oh, and I guess one more thing under options, you can change your button layout. So you got button config, sound you can choose from stereo or mono. And you can choose to turn on vibration on your controller, I guess if you have a rumble pack for the Dreamcast controller. But it's pretty cool that you can actually choose the button layout because, I mean, that Dreamcast controller is pretty funky. But it's starting to grow on me for the shooters, believe it or not. You know, I'm actually starting to prefer it. I mean, I don't have any other Dreamcast controllers, but I don't have an arcade stick for the Dreamcast yet. I am looking to get one or an adapter. There is adapters. You can play PS2 or Saturn controllers on your Dreamcast. So if you don't know about that and you have an arcade stick for one of those two systems, that is an option for you. Now, I might use that option because I might have 20 arcade sticks for different systems. I mean, I could think of 4 that I have for the Neo Geo. So, you know, just to save space, at least for me, I might look for one of those controller adapters as a good option. Now, the only other thing I could think to mention before starting the game would be you get 5 credits, you get 3 lives per credit, and there's 3 different ships to choose from. I say ships, I mean they're helicopters in this game. But anyway, you got the Apache, the Hokum, and the Komachi. I guess that's how they're pronounced. And they don't have their little subtle nuances that you would have in any other shooter that you can choose multiple ships. So let's get right into the controls. So basically, this game you use every face button on the controller. 2 of the buttons are dedicated to the crosshairs / axis that you swing around. Again, that's part of the battle mechanics that we'll get into just here in a minute. And the other 2 buttons are a special and just a regular shot button. From what I recall, there's no trigger button action going, so you really don't have to concern yourself with the left and right trigger, but all the face buttons are covered in the D-pad. The analog stick, I'm not too sure you can use the analog stick on this game. At least it didn't work on my controller. So let's get into the reason why I made this video. This game has a very unique, very special, very awesome game mechanic that I think separates it from pretty much every other shooter I've ever played. And that's the fact that, again, you have 2 dedicated buttons on your controller that you can use to bring up a crosshair / axis. What you do is that crosshair / axis allows you to swing around it, kind of like a monkey swinging from a vine. It just pretty much gives you a 360-degree rotation axis that you could swing around and hit enemies in every location. You can move back and forth and just use that mechanic to swing around your enemies and just fire shots in all kind of crazy directions. And it's something that takes a lot of skill to master, so I can see how this gimmick, because that's what this is, it's this game's gimmick. I could see how this mechanic would be very, very, very intriguing to many, many veterans of the genre. At least it is to me, and I can see how it's going to take, probably years of me playing this game to really master that mechanic. But, again, I got on Fast Tracker for being able to fire backwards, but I think this game mechanic, the gimmick in this game is done so well. It just gives the game a ton of replay value, more replay value, in fact, than almost every other shooter that I've ever played. And you can actually see that mechanic in action right now. That boss that you see on the screen right now has that circle that it can move around to hit you. You have your crosshair / axis, whatever that thing's called, to swing around and hit the enemy. Kind of like... That boss really reminds me of the first boss in Gradius 5. If you guys have ever played that game, do you see it? I don't know, it really reminds me of that boss in just a different kind of way. It would be awesome to have that same mechanic in Gradius 5 to beat that boss, because that first boss in Gradius 5 is a son of a bitch. Now moving on to the graphics, or the graphical presentation, if you will. Now, this game is 3D rendered, so you do have 3D models on the screen. This isn't a straight 2D shooter. And I know there's, I guess, purists out there that only mess with the 2D shooters. I get you. I know where you're coming from. But this is a fun game. I mean, it's on the Dreamcast at least, so you can tap into that VGA box signal and display it on an HD TV at least. Something that you probably couldn't do if this was out on a PlayStation 2. But regardless, this game looks good. I mean, coupled with the awesome game mechanics, I mean, it plays well. The controls are solid. The soundtrack on this game it's okay. It's nothing memorable. It's nothing, let's say it's nothing I'd bump in my car, but it's okay. The tracks just kind of blend together. But, I mean, this game, the game mechanic in this game is what sells it. It's an awesome, awesome mechanic that, like I said, I'm sure veterans of the genre will love, and, people like me want to master it. It keeps me coming back and has tons of replay value. So, with that being said, this game is kind of pricey, so if you can find it really cheap, I'd say pick it up. If not, you might be safe using an emulator or just burning a copy. One thing I forgot to add, I wanted to talk about the graphics, and, like I said, they're okay, nothing memorable with the graphics or the sound, but you do get these very cinematic scenes before and midway, kind of like halfway through boss battles, which really remind me of the kind of stuff that you used to see in the arcade. This is all shooters are arcade games, but this is an arcade game through and through. I mean, you fight through the level, you get to the boss, then you have a very cinematic scene, then you go into the boss battle, you might beat the boss halfway, then you have another stunning cinematic scene. So they really tap into that arcade level of fun with the mechanic and the cinematics of this game. So it's definitely one I recommend. If you can afford it, or if you can get it through other means like I did, I definitely recommend that you play this game. If you're a shooter fan or a fan of the genre, like I said, you don't want to miss out on this one. Okay, so Zero Gunner 2, you guys copping or what? Now, before you think about that, let me just say this is an expensive game. This game sells for around $160 to $220 online, depending on where you get it from. You buy it straight from Japan, you can probably get it close to that 160 mark. I am not trying to spend money like that on video games, so I am perfectly fine with making my own copy of this game and just playing that. You know, maybe one day if I hit the lottery, you know, I don't know, maybe I'll buy an original copy. But until then, I'm going to play this one. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching that. Remember to subscribe to the channel. You know, make sure you like and share the video. Until next time, peace out.